The red sun of Kepler 442b was setting behind the Rocky Mountains when Jiho Kim checked his scanner one last time. He was 22 years old and wore the blue uniform of Earth Fleet with pride on his chest. The mining station below looked quiet and peaceful, but something felt wrong in the air around them. Jiho had been working on this remote planet for 3 weeks now. His job was simple: collect mineral samples and send reports back to Earth, Command. The planet was rich in rare metals that Earth needed for building new spaceships. Most aliens in the galaxy thought humans were just newcomers who barely knew how to fly between stars. They were wrong about that. His team consisted of 4 other humans, and they had been working hard every day. The mining equipment was old but reliable, and they had found enough valuable materials to make their mission successful. Jiho was the team leader because he was smart and brave and always looked out for his people. That morning had started like any other day. They ate breakfast in their small base camp and planned which areas to survey. The planet was mostly empty except for some independent colonies that mined different sections. The colonists were friendly people from various alien species who just wanted to live in peace and make honest money. But now, as evening approached, something was different in the sky. Jiho could see bright lights moving between the stars, and they were getting bigger. His scanner started beeping with warning, signals that made his heart beat faster. These were not friendly trading ships coming to visit. The lights became massive warships that blocked out the sunset. Each ship was 10 times bigger than anything Earth had ever built. The hulls were dark, green with sharp angles that looked like the teeth of some giant predator. Red symbols glowed along their sides and weapon ports opened like hungry mouths. Jiho grabbed his communicator and called his team back to base immediately. He recognized these ships from his military training back on Earth. These belonged to the Galactic Empire, the most powerful force in known space. The Empire ruled over 10,000 worlds and treated most other species like servants or slaves. Within minutes, the Imperial fleet was landing near the mining colonies. Their ships came down like falling mountains, and the ground shook with each impact. Jiho could hear explosions in the distance and see smoke rising from the nearest settlement. His hands moved quickly over his equipment as he tried to contact Earth Fleet Command. The response came back weak and full of static. Earth was too far away to send help. Quickly, Jiho and his team were on their own against one of the most feared military forces in the galaxy. He looked at his 4 teammates and saw fear in their eyes, but also determination. They were all young, but they had trained for situations like this. Through his binoculars, Jiho watched Imperial soldiers marching through the colonies. They wore black armor that covered their entire bodies and carried energy weapons that could melt through steel. The soldiers were mostly saurians, a reptile species known for being cruel and aggressive. Their leader was taller than the others with golden markings on his armor. The Imperial forces were not here for trade or diplomacy. They were conducting what they called taxation raids, which meant taking whatever they wanted and forcing colonists to work for them. Anyone who resisted was either killed or taken prisoner. Jiho had read reports about these raids, but seeing one happen was completely different. He watched in horror as families were separated and workers were loaded onto transport ships like cargo. The Imperials treated everyone like animals that could be bought and sold. The colonists fought back as best they could, but their mining tools were no match for military-grade weapons. Jiho made a decision that would change everything. He could not just hide and watch innocent. People suffer. His team tried to stop him, but he was already moving toward the settlement with his equipment bag slung over his shoulder. His plan was simple but dangerous. He would use the mining equipment to fight back. The mining charges were powerful, enough to blast through solid rock, and the drilling lasers could cut metal pipes. If he used them right, he might be able to damage some Imperial vehicles. The other equipment could be turned into weapons too. Everything depended on surprise and quick thinking. Moving through the rocky terrain, Jiho got close to where Imperial soldiers were loading prisoners onto their ships. He planted mining charges under 3 patrol vehicles and set them to explode in 5 minutes. Then he took position with a mining laser and waited for the right moment. When the explosions rocked the Imperial camp, Jiho opened fire with everything he had. The mining laser cut through the side of a transport ship and freed a group of prisoners. The drilling equipment made holes in Imperial armor that was supposed to be invincible. His attack was so unexpected that the soldiers did not know how to respond at first. For 20 minutes, Jiho fought like a one-man army. He used every piece of mining gear like a weapon, and moved between the rocks so fast that the Imperials could not target him properly. 3 patrol ships were destroyed, and dozens of prisoners escaped back to their homes. It was the first time anyone had successfully attacked Imperial forces on this scale, but Jiho knew he could not win against an entire fleet. His goal was to buy time for people to escape and to show the Empire that humans would not surrender without a fight. He activated his emergency beacon to send a message back to Earth with all the information he had gathered about Imperial ships and weapons. The beacon transmitted data about Imperial ship designs, tactical formations, and weapon capabilities that no human had ever seen before. This intelligence would be worth more than all the minerals on the planet. It also contained a personal message from Jiho to his family and commanders on Earth. Commander Vex Moltar, the Saurian leader, was both angry and impressed by the human attack. No primitive species had ever caused this much damage to Imperial forces. The other soldiers wanted to kill Jiho immediately, but Moltar had a different idea. This brave human could be worth more alive than dead. When Imperial reinforcements finally surrounded Jiho, he was out of ammunition and equipment, but still standing. He faced them with his chin up and eyes full of defiance, even though he knew he was defeated. Moltar stepped forward and studied the young human with interest. Instead of executing Jiho on the spot, Moltar decided to take him prisoner. The commander had heard about the grand auction that happened every year on the Imperial capital world. Important prisoners and rare artifacts were sold to the highest bidder as entertainment for the wealthy and powerful. Moltar smiled, showing his sharp teeth as he looked at Jiho. This human had shown more courage and skill than most trained Imperial soldiers. He would make an excellent prize for the auction, and his sale would humiliate the entire human species. The galaxy would see that even Earth-best warriors could be bought and sold like property as Imperial soldiers put energy chains around his wrists. Jiho looked back at the settlement. Most of the colonists had escaped because of his attack, and that made everything worth it. He had completed his mission and sent crucial intelligence back to Earth. Now he would face whatever came next with the same courage he had shown in battle. The transport ship lifted off carrying Jiho toward the Imperial capital and an uncertain future. But the young cadet had already won a victory that the Empire did not understand. He had proven that humans would fight for others even when facing impossible odds, and he had given Earth the information they needed to prepare for what was coming as the ship jumped to hyperspace. Jiho closed his eyes and thought about home. He did not know that his message had reached Earth Fleet Command and that his sacrifice had just started something much bigger than anyone could imagine. The Empire had made their first mistake by underestimating what humans would do to protect one of their own. 3 weeks had passed since Jiho left Kepler 442b in chains, and now he stood on the most important planet in the galaxy. Dominion Prime was the capital world of the Galactic Empire and the center of power for 10,000 star systems. The planet was covered in massive cities that reached into the clouds, and starships filled the sky like schools of metal fish. The Grand Auction Hall was the biggest building Jiho had ever seen. It was made of crystal that sparkled in the light of 3 suns and could hold 1,000,000 beings at once. Today it was packed with representatives from every corner of the galaxy. They had come to buy rare treasures, stolen artifacts, and living beings from conquered worlds. Jiho wore simple gray clothes that marked him as auction property. The energy chains around his wrists kept him from using his full strength, but his mind was still sharp and alert. He had spent the journey studying everything about Imperial technology and culture. His captors thought he was broken, but they were completely wrong. The auction hall buzzed with excitement as buyers examined the items for sale. Jiho was lot number 847, listed as one primitive human soldier suitable for gladiatorial combat or heavy labor. The description made him sound like a piece of equipment rather than a living person, but that was exactly how the Empire saw him. Lady Zephyra from the Vorthon Collective leaned forward to get a better look at the human. Her crystal body reflected rainbow colors. As she spoke to her advisor, this species was new to her, and she found the idea of owning a human warrior quite amusing. Her people loved collecting rare things from across the galaxy. The insectoid hive speaker Crix clicked his mandibles as he calculated the human's potential value. His mining operations needed workers who could adapt to dangerous conditions, and humans were known for being surprisingly tough for such a small species. The bidding would be interesting today. Jiho observed everything. With the trained eye of a military officer, he memorized guard positions, noted security weaknesses, and studied the behavior patterns of different alien species. Every detail might be useful later if an opportunity for escape presented itself. His training had taught him that no situation was completely hopeless. On the highest platform, Emperor Thaxon the Eternal watched the proceedings with ancient eyes. He had ruled the galaxy for over 1,000 years, and had seen countless species rise and fall. The human auction was just entertainment to him. Another example of how the strong naturally ruled over the weak. The auctioneer was a tall blue alien with 4 arms who spoke in a voice that carried through the entire hall. He began the bidding at 1,000 Imperial credits, which was an insult to any trained soldier, but Jiho kept his face calm and showed no emotion. The aliens expected him to be afraid or angry, and he would not give them that satisfaction. Lady Zephyra made the first bid, raising her crystalline hand with elegant grace. She was followed by hive speaker Crix, whose compound eyes glittered with interest. Several other buyers joined in as the price climbed higher. The human was becoming more valuable by the minute. As the bidding continued, Jiho noticed something strange happening throughout the auction hall. Security guards were checking their communication devices and looking worried. Several important officials had left their seats to take urgent calls. The normal routine was being disrupted by something unexpected. The price reached 30,000 credits when the first communication device activated without warning. A holographic display appeared in the air, showing the symbol of Earth. Fleet Command. The aliens in the audience laughed, thinking it was some kind of technical malfunction, but more devices kept activating until hundreds of screens filled the hall. Jiho felt his heart rate increase as he recognized what was happening. This was a coordinated transmission that had been planned down to the second Earth was about to make contact with the Galactic Empire, and the timing was no accident. They had been counting down to this exact moment. The auctioneer tried to continue, but the noise from all the activated devices was too loud. Lady Zephyra had just bid 40,000 credits when every screen in the hall suddenly showed the same image. A stern-faced woman in an Earth Fleet uniform appeared before the shocked alien audience. Admiral Yuki Tanaka looked directly into the camera with eyes that burned with controlled fury. Her voice was calm and clear as she spoke, but Jiho could hear the steel underneath her words. This was the moment that would change everything. Between Earth and the Empire. The audience reaction was immediate. Some aliens burst into laughter at the sight of a human making demands. Others looked confused or worried about what this unprecedented event might mean. The Empire had never been challenged so publicly by any species, especially not by newcomers like humans. Emperor Thaxon leaned forward with interest rather than concern. This was the most entertaining thing that had happened at an auction in centuries. He was curious to see how far these primitive humans would go with their obvious suicide mission. The galaxy needed to be reminded of what happened to species that challenged Imperial authority. But Jiho knew something that the Emperor and everyone else in the hall did. Not know Earth had been preparing for this day for much longer than anyone suspected. The intelligence he had transmitted from Kepler 442b was just one piece of a much larger plan that was about to unfold. The bidding had stopped completely as every being in the hall focused on the human admirals speaking from their communication screens. This was no longer just an auction. It was about to become the opening ceremony of the first real challenge to imperial power in over 1,000 years. As Admiral, Tanaka continued her message. Jiho allowed himself a small smile. The Empire thought they had captured a simple mining survey team leader, but they had actually triggered something much bigger. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when you made the mistake of underestimating human determination and planning. The crystal walls of the auction hall seemed to vibrate with tension as the most powerful beings in the galaxy realized that their perfect day of entertainment was turning into something completely unexpected. The human they had been laughing about was about to become the center of a conflict that would reshape everything they knew. Admiral Yuki Tanaka stood in the command center of Earth Defense Headquarters, surrounded by screens showing star maps and tactical displays. Her silver hair was pulled back in a tight bun, and her dark eyes held the weight of an entire species. Destiny. Today, she would speak words that would either save humanity or doom them all to extinction. The transmission room was filled with Earth-top military leaders and government officials. Everyone knew that what happened in the next few minutes would determine whether humans would remain free or become slaves to the Galactic Empire. The countdown timer showed 30 seconds until they reached the Galactic Empire. Grand Auction Director Sato, the head of Earth Intelligence, sat at a control panel, monitoring the signal strength. They had spent months preparing for this moment, building hidden transmitters and infiltrating Imperial communication networks. The technology to broadcast directly into the heart of the Empire had cost them years of secret development. The timer reached 0, and Admiral Tanaka began speaking with the calm authority that had made her the most respected military leader on Earth. Her words were being translated instantly into thousands of alien languages and transmitted to every corner of the galaxy. This was humanity. First official contact with the Galactic Empire. Citizens of the galaxy. She began her voice carrying across billions of worlds through hijacked Imperial communication networks. The Galactic Empire has committed an act that cannot be ignored or forgiven. They have taken one of our people and are treating him like property to be bought and sold. The reaction from Dominion Prime was immediate. Alien laughter echoed through the auction hall as they found the idea of humans making demands absolutely hilarious. Emperor Thaxon himself was smiling with amusement at what appeared to be an elaborate joke. These primitive creatures actually thought they could threaten the mighty Galactic Empire. But Admiral Tanaka continued without pause, her words cutting through the laughter like a blade. This action crosses a line that separates civilization from barbarism. No sentient being should ever be treated as merchandise. We have tried diplomacy, and it has been ignored. We have offered trade and been dismissed as unworthy. Now we respond with the only language the Empire seems to understand. Back on Earth, millions of people watch the broadcast from their homes, schools, and workplaces. Children who had grown up hearing stories about the dangers of space now saw their leaders standing up to the greatest threat humanity had ever faced. Parents held their families close, knowing that everything was about to change. The Admiral paused for a moment, letting her words sink in across the galaxy, then delivered the statement that would echo through history. As of this moment, Earth officially declares a state of war against the Galactic Empire. We demand the immediate release of Cadet Jiho Kim and formal recognition of human sovereignty. You have 72 hours to comply. The silence that followed lasted exactly 3 seconds before chaos erupted throughout Imperial space. News networks scrambled to cover this unprecedented development. Military bases went to high alert, and government officials tried to understand what this could possibly mean for galactic stability on Dominion Prime. The laughter had stopped completely. Emperor Thaxon was no longer smiling as he processed what he had just heard. A species that barely controlled one solar system was declaring war against an empire that spanned thousands of worlds. This was either madness or these humans possessed capabilities that had been completely underestimated. Military analysts across the empire began reviewing everything they knew about human technology and capabilities. Most reports described humans as primitive beings with simple weapons and basic space travel, but now they wondered if those reports had been deliberately misleading or simply wrong. Admiral Tanaka raised her hand to quiet the command center around her and continued speaking to the galaxy. The Empire believes that might makes right, and that advanced civilizations can enslave those they consider inferior. This philosophy has created suffering on billions of worlds and destroyed countless species who deserved better. We stand not just for humanity, but for every being who has been crushed under the weight of imperial oppression. The Zentari, who fight for their freedom. The Mindari, who resist mental enslavement. The Helix Collective, who refuse to surrender their technology. Every species that values liberty over submission. The words reached resistance, movements across the galaxy, who had been hiding in shadows for generations. Suddenly, they had a voice speaking for them from the most unlikely source. Humans who had seemed too weak to matter were standing up to the Empire in ways that established powers never dared. Emperor Thaxon stood from his throne for the first time in decades. His ancient mind was calculating possibilities that he had never needed to consider. The Human Declaration was either the greatest act of stupidity in galactic history or the beginning of something that could threaten everything he had built. Admiral Tanaka's voice grew stronger as she delivered her final challenge. We know the Empire will respond with violence because that is all they understand. But they should know that Earth is not defenseless. We have prepared for this day longer than they realize. We have allies they do not know about and capabilities they cannot imagine. The 72-hour deadline is not a request. It is a final warning. Release. Cadet Kim recognize human independence and begin negotiations for the peaceful dissolution of your slave empire or face the consequences. We are done being ignored, dismissed, and underestimated. The galaxy is about to learn what humans are truly capable of. The transmission ended, leaving stunned silence across thousands of worlds. The most powerful beings in the galaxy sat in shock, trying to process what they had just witnessed. A species they had never taken seriously had just issued an ultimatum to the greatest military force in known space. On Earth, the population erupted in cheers that could be heard from orbit. Admiral Tanaka had spoken for every human who had ever dreamed of traveling to the stars without fear of enslavement. She had drawn a line that could never be uncrossed and declared that humanity would never bow to anyone. But in the depths of space, human warships were already moving toward Imperial territory. Their crews had been preparing for this moment for years. The 72-hour countdown was not just a deadline, it was the final phase of the most ambitious military operation in human history. Emperor Thaxon called an emergency meeting of his war council as alarms sounded throughout the imperial capital. The humans had made their choice, and now the Empire would show the galaxy what happened to species foolish enough to challenge imperial authority. But something in the back of his ancient mind whispered that this time might be different. The auction hall on Dominion Prime remained frozen in shocked silence, as beings who had come to buy entertainment found themselves witnessing the beginning of what could be the greatest war in galactic history. The human standing on the auction block was no longer just merchandise. He had become the spark that would ignite everything they thought they knew about power in the universe. Exactly 71 hours and 58 minutes after Admiral Tanaka delivered her ultimatum, the early warning systems around Dominion Prime began screaming alerts that made no sense. The most advanced detection network in the galaxy showed absolutely nothing on its screens, yet every sensor was reporting massive energy signatures appearing throughout the system. Captain Minho Park stood on the bridge of the ESS Incheon, watching as his fleet materialized from what the Empire thought was empty space. The human ships had been hiding in the asteroid belt using stealth technology that made them invisible to Imperial sensors. For weeks, they had been preparing for this exact moment. The Incheon was the largest warship Earth had ever built, but it looked nothing like the massive Imperial dreadnoughts. Instead, it was sleek and angular, with a hull that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. The ship was surrounded by dozens of smaller human vessels, each one designed for speed and precision rather than raw firepower. Admiral Park had studied Imperial battle tactics for years and knew that the Empire relied on overwhelming force and superior numbers to win their battles. Human ships were outnumbered 1,000 to 1, but they had advantages that the Empire could not understand or counter. Park smiled as his fleet completed its deployment around the capital world. On the surface of Dominion, Prime Emperor Thaxon watched the displays in his war room with growing confusion. The early warning systems were malfunctioning, showing energy readings that suggested a massive fleet, but the visual scanners showed nothing. The technical staff assured him it was just equipment failure. Then space around the planet exploded, with light as human ships dropped their stealth fields and appeared in perfect attack formation. The Imperial fleet that guarded the capital suddenly found themselves facing an enemy that had materialized from nowhere, like ghosts becoming solid. Captain Park opened a communication channel that broadcast throughout the Dominion Prime system. His voice was calm and professional as he delivered what would be the final warning the Empire would receive. This is Captain Minho Park of the Earth Defense Force. You have 2 minutes to release Cadet Kim and surrender unconditionally. This is your only warning. The response came immediately from the orbital defense platforms that surrounded the planet. Massive energy beams capable of destroying. Moons lanced out toward the human fleet. The weapons had never failed to obliterate any enemy that dared approach the Imperial capital. But something impossible happened. Instead of vaporizing the human ships, the energy beams seemed to bend around them like water flowing around stones. The human vessels absorbed some of the energy and redirected the rest back toward the Imperial stations. The platforms began exploding from their own reflected weapons. Emperor Thaxon stared at the tactical displays in disbelief as his supposedly invincible defenses crumbled before his eyes. The human ships were using some kind of shield technology that turned the Empire's own weapons against them. How had these primitive beings developed such advanced capabilities? The Imperial fleet moved to engage the human vessels, expecting to crush them through superior numbers and firepower. Admiral Rexus, commanding the Dominion Defense Fleet, had never lost a battle in 300 years of service. He ordered his ships to surround and destroy the human invaders. What followed was unlike any space battle in galactic history. The human ships moved with impossible coordination, weaving between Imperial formations like dancers performing a deadly ballet. Every movement seemed planned and practiced, as if they had fought this exact battle 100 times before. The human weapons were different too. Instead of trying to overpower Imperial shields, they found weaknesses and exploited them with surgical precision. Small human fighters slipped past massive Imperial defenses and struck at critical systems, crippling ships 10 times their size. Captain Park coordinated his fleet from the Incheon Bridge, watching as his carefully planned tactics unfolded perfectly. The humans had spent years analyzing Imperial ship designs from the intelligence Jiho had transmitted. Every weakness had been identified and countermeasures developed. The ESS Seoul, commanded by Captain Yuna Lee, led a squadron of destroyers against the Imperial heavy cruisers. Her ships used hit-and-run tactics learned from ancient Earth naval battles, striking hard and fast before disappearing back into the asteroid field. The Imperial captains had never faced such unconventional warfare. Meanwhile, the ESS Busan, under Captain Do Yun Choi, engaged the main Imperial battle line with weapons that seemed to ignore traditional defensive systems. The human particle beams cut through Imperial armor like it was made of paper, while their missiles found gaps in shields that should not have existed. Emperor Thaxan watched his fleet being systematically destroyed by an enemy he had thought was primitive and helpless. Ship after ship exploded or went dark as human forces demonstrated tactical superiority that the Empire had never encountered. The oldest military organization in the galaxy was being outfought by newcomers. Admiral Rexus sent his personal message to the Emperor as his flagship began to lose power. The humans fight like they know exactly what we are going to do before we do it. Their technology is beyond anything in our databases. This is not a primitive species. This is something else entirely. The space battle raged for 6 hours as human ships carved through Imperial defenses that had protected the capital for 2,000 years. The orbital platforms fell one by one, their massive weapons useless against human shield technology that seemed to violate the laws of physics. Captain Park finally opened communications with the Imperial Command Center as the last defense platform exploded in a ball of fire. This is your final opportunity to surrender and release Cadet Kim. Your orbital defenses are destroyed and your fleet is crippled. You cannot win this battle. Emperor Thaxan looked at the tactical display showing the smoking wreckage of his once mighty fleet. The humans had achieved in hours what no enemy had managed in millennia. They had broken the defenses of Dominion Prime and proven that the Empire was not invincible. The ancient ruler realized that everything he thought he knew about galactic power was wrong. These humans were not primitive beings stumbling into space. They were warriors who had been preparing for this confrontation. With careful planning and revolutionary technology, the Empire had made the mistake of judging them by their appearance rather than their capabilities. As Imperial resistance crumbled around the capital world, Captain Park prepared for the final phase of the operation. The orbital battle was won, but Jiho was still somewhere on the planet's surface. The human fleet had proven their point. Now they had to complete their rescue mission and show the galaxy that Earth never abandoned its own, the Sa. Communication channels filled with surrender offers from Imperial commanders who finally understood they were facing something beyond their experience. But Captain Park knew the real test was still coming. The easy part was defeating ships in space. The hard part was extracting one human from the most heavily defended planet in the Empire. While the space battle rages above Dominion Prime, Jiho uses the chaos to execute an escape plan he's been developing since his capture. The young cadet's training in asymmetric warfare serves him well as he breaks free from the auction house detention cells during an Imperial security lockdown. Moving through the capital city's underground tunnels, Jiho encounters Kira, a member of the Zentari resistance movement, a species that has been fighting Imperial occupation for generations. Kira initially distrusts the human, having never seen his species before, but Jiho's actions during the escape prove his worth. Together, they navigate through Imperial security cordons while the city burns above them. As they move through the underground resistance network, Jiho discovers something remarkable. Earth isn't the only species that has been secretly preparing for this war. The Zentari, the telepathic Mindari, the technological Helix Collective, and dozens of other oppressed races have been coordinating through hidden channels, waiting for the right moment to strike. Jiho's capture and the resulting human declaration of war has become the signal they've all been waiting for. Across the galaxy, simultaneous uprisings begin as suppressed species rise against their imperial overlords. The rebellion isn't just about humanity. It's about every species that refuses to accept imperial domination. Working with Kira and her resistance cell, Jiho helps coordinate ground-based attacks against imperial infrastructure. His military training combines with Zentari knowledge of imperial weak points to create devastating strikes against key installations. The human cadet who was supposed to be sold as property becomes a symbol of defiance for the entire rebellion. As captain, Park's fleet gains control of orbital space. Jiho establishes communication with the ESS Incheon, providing crucial intelligence about Imperial ground defenses and helping coordinate the liberation of other prisoners held on Dominion Prime. The reunion between the determined cadet and his rescuers becomes a moment of triumph that resonates across the galaxy. The final confrontation takes place in Emperor Thaxon's throne room as human marines, led by Sergeant Nari Choi, fight their way through the Imperial Palace. The ancient ruler, who has never faced real opposition in over a millennium, finds himself confronting the reality that his empire is crumbling around him. Emperor Thaxon attempts to negotiate, offering concessions and territory in exchange for peace. But Admiral Tanaka, now aboard the captured Imperial flagship, makes it clear that humanity will accept nothing less than the complete dismantling of the Imperial system of slavery and forced tribute. The war has revealed the true extent of Imperial oppression, and Earth refuses to allow it to continue. As news of the Emperor's capture spreads across the galaxy, Imperial forces begin surrendering system by system. The rebellion that started with one human cadet's auction has grown into a galactic revolution. Species that had never worked together before unite under a common cause, the right to determine their own destinies. Jiho, now promoted to lieutenant for his crucial role in the liberation of Dominion Prime, stands alongside representatives from dozens of species as they establish the Galactic Democratic Alliance. The organization's first act is to formally abolish slavery, forced labor, and tribute systems throughout former Imperial space. The story concludes with Jiho returning to Earth as a hero, but more importantly, as a symbol of what humanity represents to the galaxy: the refusal to accept oppression and the willingness to fight for the freedom of all sentient beings. The Empire's fatal mistake wasn't just enslaving a human, it was underestimating the lengths to which humanity would go to protect one of their own. The former Imperial capital becomes the seat of the new galactic government, where species that were once enemies work together to build a better future. And at the center of it all stands the auction block where Jiho was once sold, now converted into a monument dedicated to the principle that no sentient being should ever be treated as property. The galaxy learns that humans don't just fight for themselves, they fight for the idea that freedom is the birthright of every intelligent species in the universe.